You wake up in the morning, grab your phone, and immediately your rational mind kicks into action. You need to check emails, analyze the news, make data-driven decisions, plan your day with maximum efficiency. This is the life we've been sold as ideal. Purely rational beings, logical processing machines, navigating a world that demands constant analysis. But here's the disturbing truth that few dare to admit. This very rationality that brought us this far is becoming our greatest obstacle to what lies ahead. In 2026, less than 2 years from now, those who continue operating exclusively through this rational lens will discover they've built a mental prison from which escape will be impossible. Think about the last time you tried to solve a complex problem by applying pure logic. Maybe it was a relationship decision, a career choice, or something as simple as understanding why you feel anxious for no apparent reason. You made pros and cons, lists, researched data, consulted experts, applied decision-making frameworks, and yet, in the end, something inside you whispered that all those data points were missing the essential point. That feeling isn't your failure. It's your mind trying to tell you that the world has changed and the tools that worked perfectly in the last century are not just inadequate now, but may actually be harming us. The glorification of the rational mind isn't accidental or natural. It's a specific historical product born during the Enlightenment, when thinkers like Descartes and Newton managed to explain natural phenomena through clear logical principles. For 3 centuries, this approach worked magnificently. Reason gave us science, modern medicine, technology, more just political systems. We built our entire civilization on the premise that complex problems can be broken down into smaller parts, analyzed objectively, and solved through systematic application of logic. This strategy brought us unprecedented prosperity and allowed us to dominate the planet in ways our ancestors could never have imagined possible. But observe what happens when you try to apply this same logic to the challenges that really matter in your life today. You rationally analyze your career choices, but the job market changes so rapidly that your data becomes obsolete before you finish the analysis. You scientifically study the best educational methods for your children, but they're growing up in a digital world that operates by completely different rules from those you learned. You try to rationally understand why you feel isolated, despite being more connected than any previous generation, and discover that logic simply cannot capture the essence of this contemporary human experience. The issue isn't that rationality is inherently bad, but that it has become a kind of cognitive monotheism. We believe that if we can't measure, quantify, and logically analyze something, then it's not real or doesn't deserve serious attention. This mentality is creating a generation of people who are simultaneously more informed and more confused than ever. They have access to infinite amounts of data, but have lost the ability to extract wisdom from this data. They can solve complex technical problems, but feel lost when faced with fundamental questions about purpose, connection, and meaning. In 2024, something crucial began to change. Artificial intelligence didn't just match our rational processing capacity in many areas, but completely surpassed it. GPT and other systems can analyze data, make logical connections, and solve problems with speed and precision that make our rational brains comparatively slow and error-prone. For the first time in human history, our primary competitive advantage is being outsourced to machines. And here's the crucial paradox. The more we depend on AI for rational tasks, the more we discover that our humanity lies precisely in what is not rational. Those moments of intuition you've always dismissed as less valid than logical analysis, they represent forms of processing that no machine can replicate. The ability to feel the energy of a room when you enter, to instinctively know if someone is lying without being able to explain how, to have creative insights that seem to emerge from nowhere, to form deep emotional connections that transcend any rational explanation. These abilities aren't flaws in human thinking that need to be corrected. They are precisely what makes us irreplaceable in a world dominated by artificial intelligence. But here's where the story gets really interesting and perhaps a bit scary. People who have spent decades training exclusively their rational mind find themselves in a peculiar position. They're like virtuoso pianists discovering that the piano is becoming obsolete. All the skills they cultivated so carefully, all the identity built around being the people who think logically and make data-based decisions, suddenly becomes less relevant. Worse still, years of neglecting other forms of cognition have left these muscles atrophied and difficult to rediscover. Think about the young children you know. Before being trained to distrust their intuition, they navigate the world through a rich mixture of sensation, emotion, imagination, and logic. They ask questions that adults consider illogical but often touch on deep truths. They form friendships based on factors they cannot rationally articulate, but which often prove lasting and meaningful. They create creative solutions to problems that adults approach in rigid and predictable ways. This isn't cognitive immaturity, it's cognitive flexibility. The educational and corporate system of the last 50 years systematically trained this flexibility out of us. We learned that feelings are less important than facts, that intuition is less reliable than analysis, that creativity is less valuable than efficiency. We built entire careers on our ability to suppress these other forms of knowledge in favor of pure rationality. And now, ironically, these same careers are being automated by systems that do rationality better than we ever could. In 2026, the division between those who have rediscovered these broader human capacities and those who remain trapped in the prison of exclusive rationality will become a completely new class divide. It won't be about formal education or financial resources, but about cognitive flexibility. People who can fluidly navigate between different modes of knowing, who know when to trust data and when to trust intuition, who can collaborate with AI without losing their essential humanity, these people will not only prosper, but become the new leaders of a civilization in transformation. But those who insist that pure rationality is sufficient will find themselves in an increasingly irrelevant position. They'll be like scribes who insist on copying books by hand after the invention of the printing press. Technically competent, but fundamentally misaligned with the needs of their time. They'll continue trying to solve 21st century problems with 18th century tools, wondering why their results become increasingly unsatisfactory. The irony is that this transition has already begun, but many people don't recognize it because they're looking for it through the rational lens. They expect social changes to manifest through clear statistics and linear trends, but truly profound transformations often begin in places that data cannot capture. They begin in how people feel, in the conversations they have, in the types of questions they ask, in the values they prioritize, when no one is measuring. Observe the most interesting and influential people you know today. They're probably not the ones with the best data or the most sophisticated analyses. They're the ones who can feel trends before they become statistically obvious, who make unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated ideas, who communicate in ways that touch something deep in people. They operate through an intelligence that is simultaneously more primitive and more advanced than pure rationality. This isn't a call to abandon reason completely. That would be as unbalanced as relying exclusively on it. The issue is integration. Imagine a mind that can use logical analysis when appropriate, but can also access intuitive wisdom, emotional intelligence, non-linear creativity, and even forms of knowledge we can't yet adequately name. This is the mind that will be necessary to navigate the growing complexity of the world we're creating. Those who begin this integration work now will have an enormous advantage over those who wait until the need becomes too obvious to ignore, because rediscovering these capacities after decades of neglect isn't simple. It's like trying to relearn to walk after years of paralysis. Possible, but requires time, patience, and willingness to feel temporarily incompetent. The good news is that these capacities never really disappeared. They were suppressed, not destroyed. Every time you have a hunch about someone that later proves correct, every time a solution emerges in your mind during a relaxing shower after hours of fruitless analysis, every time you feel inexplicably attracted or repelled by an opportunity without being able to rationally justify why you're experiencing these other forms of intelligence trying to communicate with you, the challenge is learning to trust them again. Decades of conditioning taught us to dismiss these insights as coincidence, wishful thinking, or simply irrelevant. We learn to apologize for our intuitions, to always follow our hunches with disclaimers that we know they're not scientific. This systematic distrust of our own non-rational wisdom is leaving us as strangers in our own bodies and minds. Reconnecting with these capacities doesn't mean becoming irrational or anti-scientific. It means becoming more fully human. It means recognizing that we are incredibly sophisticated information processing systems that operate on multiple layers simultaneously. Our conscious, rational mind is just the tip of the iceberg. Below it exists a vast processing network that analyzes patterns, detects nuances, makes connections, and reaches conclusions through methods that science is only beginning to understand. When you learn to work with this entire system instead of just its most superficial layer, your ability to navigate complexity increases exponentially. You become capable of making better decisions with incomplete information, detecting opportunities and threats that others don't see, forming deeper and more authentic relationships, finding satisfaction in a world that's changing too rapidly to be completely understood rationally. But perhaps most importantly, you become capable of collaborating with artificial intelligence in a symbiotic rather than competitive way. Because AI is extraordinary at rational processing, but cannot replicate the richness of conscious human experience. It can analyze millions of data points about relationships, but cannot feel the subtle difference between genuine connection and social performance. It can optimize efficiency in any system, but cannot discern which objectives are worth pursuing in the first place. It can solve complex technical problems, but cannot answer fundamental questions about what makes life worth living. These are precisely the areas where our non-rational humanity becomes not just relevant, but essential. And those who know how to inhabit and articulate this humanity will become the interpreters between the world of machines and the world of human experience. They'll be the ones who define which problems are worth having machines solve, who translate complex human needs into parameters that AI can work with, who ensure that increased technological efficiency serves human flourishing instead of replacing it. Now, I want to pause and ask you directly, when was the last time you completely trusted one of your intuitions, even when you couldn't rationally explain why? Those moments when something inside you knew the answer before your conscious mind could process it? I know many of us were trained to distrust these insights, to always look for logical justifications for our hunches. But perhaps it's time to consider that this distrust is disconnecting us from a form of intelligence that will be crucial for our future. If you recognize this tension between what you feel and what you can rationally prove, share in the comments. My intuition tells me, but my rational mind questions this because your honesty might help others recognize they're not alone in this internal struggle between different forms of knowledge. In 2026, when we look back, we'll see 2024 and 2025 as the years when this transition became inevitable, not because some dramatic event forced the change, but because the accumulated pressure of trying to function as rational machines in a world that demands integral human wisdom finally became unsustainable. People who recognized this moment and began consciously working to reintegrate their complete cognitive capacities will find themselves in natural leadership positions. Not because they got better data or made superior analysis, but because they could navigate the inherent complexity of human experience in ways that others had lost. The necessary transformation isn't radical or esoteric. It's actually a return to what we always were before we were convinced we were just biological computers. Young children already operate in this integrated way. Artists, elite athletes, and exceptional leaders in any field often describe states where their performance transcends what they could achieve through purely rational thinking. Indigenous peoples maintained decision-making traditions that incorporate multiple forms of wisdom. We are not inventing something new, we are recovering something we lost. What's new is the context. For the first time in history, our survival and prosperity as a species may depend not on our capacity to be more rational, but on our capacity to be wiser. And wisdom is what happens when reason meets intuition, when analysis combines with empathy, when efficiency balances with meaning. It's what emerges when we stop trying to be perfect machines and start being extraordinary humans. This moment we're living now, in 2024, is a historic opportunity, a window where we can still consciously choose how we want to evolve. We can continue insisting that pure rationality is sufficient and discover in a few years that we've become obsolete in our own civilization. Or we can begin now the work of rediscovering and integrating our complete humanity, positioning ourselves to lead the next phase of human evolution. The choice isn't between being rational or irrational, it's between being limitedly human or fully human, between operating just a fraction of our cognitive capacities or learning to orchestrate the entire spectrum of our intelligence, between competing with machines on their strengths or collaborating with them through our unique strengths. If these reflections touched on something you've been feeling, but perhaps couldn't clearly name, I invite you to join us in this ongoing exploration. By subscribing to the channel, you'll become part of a growing community of people who are consciously navigating this transition, sharing insights about how to integrate different forms of wisdom and building together new ways of thinking adequate to the extraordinary challenges of our time. This isn't just an intellectual journey, but a practical transformation that can fundamentally change how you experience and navigate your life. Subscribe so we can continue this essential conversation about what it means to be human in an age of artificial intelligence. The future won't be determined by those who can process more data, but by those who can extract wisdom from experiences that no data can capture. The rational mind will continue being a valuable tool, but only when integrated with all the other dimensions of our humanity. Those who understand this first will not only survive the coming transformation, but become its architects. If you think about all the debate about abortion, without going into the debate itself, the people who think, rightly or wrongly, but they think that abortion is murder, they have a very strong incentive to build a surveillance system for American women, to stop murder. Mm-hmm. Like, you can build this surveillance system that can identify, yesterday you're pregnant, today you are not, what happened in between? So it's not just a problem, for Iran or for the Palestinians or the Chinese. This can come to the US as well.
And to prevent them from crossing state lines, things like that.
Yeah. Like, okay, you went from, Texas to California, you were pregnant, you came back, you're not pregnant. What happened in California?
Or if you thought someone was eating the dogs and the cats and the pets, like
That's the third kind of information. That's the intersubjective. So you have objective,
yes.
You have subjective, then you have the intersubjective.
Okay, what's
the intersubjective realm? This is things that exist in the communication network between people. Mm-hmm. So this is where you find the image of Jesus, and this is where you find the US dollar, and this is where you find the people eating dogs and cats.
Right.
It's something that is not objectively true, but it's not just the fantasy of a single individual or the feeling, only I feel it. It's in the communication, in the information network between all of us, or some of us. Yeah. If enough people believe it, if enough people talk about it, it connects. Again, even if we continue with these dogs and cats, you had maybe the most important conversation in the world, meant to help the citizens of the United States decide who would control the nuclear weapons that could destroy the world.
Exactly.
And the only thing that most people remember from this hour of debate was the dogs and cats.
Welcome to America.
Most information in the world is junk.
In just a word or two, explain why modern AI might destroy democracy.
The key issue is that democracy is based on trust, whereas dictatorship is based on terror.
This extremely cynical view of humans is not true.
What you've done in your recent book, Nexus.
The book is about the history of information.
To offer a different lens for information.
Information isn't truth.
It's not a question of helpful or dangerous. It's the magnitude of the change.
We need more boring politicians, for instance.
For sure.
Suffering is the rejection of reality.
One of the last stories that still connects everybody is the story of money.
This whole problem becomes much greater with AI.
AIs can make decisions. They are not just tools in our hands, they are agents, creating new realities.
$7,000, $25,000 unarmed civilian. Should keep it like, you know?